What's it like now being here compared to how many years ago, 3 years ago? What's it feel like?
It still feels like the combine, but it is different for us because we got a really good feel for where we're at and where we're headed and what we need and how we're going to go about that process. It's the fourth off season for us together. A lot more familiarity amongst everybody. It's good. It's a good feeling to be here in a spot, knowing that we have a pretty clear path of what we want to get done. And for us, we're just starting. I don't even know who any of these guys are. So I walk into the interviews, and it's the first time I've heard most of their names, to be honest. So it's crazy to think we just played 2 weeks ago, but it's a good process. And now we're full into the player acquisition part of the off season, and it'll be that way now for the next probably 6 weeks or so, purely on free agency and the draft and all the things that come with the off season. So it feels good. It feels good to be where we're at. And I feel comfortable, but still got the edge to try to get our team better.
What was your evaluation of Riley Reef when he was healthy? Obviously, he's set to become a free agent a couple weeks before all that. But when he was healthy, what did you think of what he did for you guys?
He was great for us. Steadying presence in the room, great leadership. Typical 10-year veteran, a guy that had played a lot of football, was really steadying for us at that spot. I thought he played well. It was kind of a bummer to lose him. It was good. We got a chance to see Isaiah play a bunch, which was good for us to see. But he was really, really solid for us. I'm happy we had a chance to get him to come play for us, and I thought he did a good job when he was in there. And it was a bummer to lose him. What was it, 12 weeks into the season? But that's never fun when you lose guys. But he was really good for us, really solid player.
Do you feel like you guys have a current long-term right tackle option on the roster?
We're going to find out. I think we feel really good about the young players in our building. But you're always looking for whatever's out there to improve. You can improve, you improve. Riley was a good addition for us. Isaiah played well at spots for us through the course of the end of the season. We've got a lot of traits that you like with his length and his athleticism and his toughness. We're in that mode now where, you're always trying to find better. Really across the board at all positions, and if you can improve your team, you do it. That's what makes the NFL what it is. And so we're every position's looking for improvement, probably other than Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. Those guys are pretty well settled in, but when you can improve your team, you do so, and then you got to keep building and keep climbing to try to get better.
How did you process the game? How many times have you watched it? And we didn't get to talk to you after it. So what did you think was the biggest difference in how the Rams were able to get after you guys from a pass rushing standpoint?
I thought we had a really solid pass protection plan going in, and it was really good in the first half. And then their good players just turned it on in the second half. They're playing for a championship, and Aaron Donald was who he is. He's the best player in football. And Von Miller can still rush with the best of them, and Leonard Floyd's still a good rusher. They did a good job. They won some matchups one-on-one that they got into. We did our best to try to keep our guys off of one-on-ones with those guys, but you can't do it all the time. They won their share of matchups down the stretch of the game. That really made the difference for them. And it's a great pass rush front. They did it to a lot of teams over the course of the year. It was a nightmare to watch getting ready for, but I thought our guys fought, put us in position really within 50 yards of winning the game, in a game that it was a battle and it was hard, but I thought our guys played well. As far as processing it, though, I would say I watched it once right after when we got back, and that's really kind of it. And you just got to move on because the offseason comes at you quick. We're going to be into these, the combine was coming up within a week, and you got to reset your brain and get ready to do it all over again. And it's a hard thing to do, but you have to do it, and it really just starts over. And you just got to take all the things good and bad from it, and then get ready to go again because the league's not waiting on us. So we're going to have to step up and keep going.
What were your thoughts at all?
Early in the middle part of the season, Brian, you guys made an emphasis that we've got to find a way to get a yard or two and maybe get it. Also cropped up in the Super Bowl, first half and second half, obviously.
Yep.
How do you go about improving that next year?
There's a lot of ways that you can improve it. I thought our execution wasn't great in both of those spots at a couple different places, but ultimately when it came down to being able to get a yard, we had to do it, and we didn't. And that's a tough spot to be in. It's a tough pill to swallow. But those are the situations you got to be good in. And if you want to be able to get a yard to win a Super Bowl, you got to be able to do that. And obviously we didn't get that done. It's disappointing for a lot of reasons. But it's going to be a point of emphasis, and you got to be able to get a yard when the game requires you to get a yard, and we did.
How many times did you hit rewind on the last play? And maybe can you walk us through the last play? What your thoughts were?
I mean, just enough to know what was there. I think that's a prime example of a great player making a great play. Aaron Donald disrupted the line of scrimmage. He's the one that disrupted the whole thing at that spot. We were sliding to him. We had to, Trey was going there. He got around Quentin's edge fast. And that's what he does. He does it to a lot of people. But we were trying to get 2 guys on him at that point. And then they did a nice job on their coverage scheme. Joe worked the left side, and we had a shot to maybe hit CJ late in the flat, but there wasn't much time. On the other side, Jamar had a go route. He won late in the down, but Joe was looking the other way to try to get the first down. And that's one of those things that in a game like that, in a play like that, it never comes down to that one particular play, but Aaron Donald did his best to ruin that play for us. And he did. He ruined it. But we had chances, we had spots, and if we had a little more time, maybe the ball gets off to either one of the guys in the pattern. But that's just how it goes.
What do you think of?
No, I was just going to follow up. That's something you can't. I mean, as a play call or a designer,
No.
you just move on to the.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it for a long time, and it's never going to leave you. But you think about what you could have done differently. Was there a different call? How you could have helped on those guys differently? But at the end of the day, a great player made a great play in a huge moment. And that's usually what separates teams in those spots. And they made the play, and we didn't.
What do you make of how the offense did throughout the year? Because y'all obviously were arguably the most explosive offense in the NFL, but in terms of sustaining drives, it wasn't always there for y'all. How would you go about evaluating how the unit looked throughout the entire year?
Yeah, we're in the middle of that process, to kind of reflect and go back. We haven't the self-scout portion. I could probably answer that question a little bit better in a month or two, but we sought to improve our explosiveness from last year, and we did, and that was a huge part of why we were in the spots we were in over the course of the year, because of our explosiveness, and that was a big part of it. It's what comes first. Are you explosive because are you not as efficient during the course of the game because you're scoring from further out more often? That's probably part of it. But I do think that there definitely was points in the year where our consistency could have been better, our performance could have been better. But ultimately, I think we did enough to win a lot of the games we played, particularly down the stretch, against some pretty good defenses. So there's certainly a lot of time to go through and reevaluate all those things and see where we could do better and what concepts were good and where we could be more efficient. But at the end of the day, the explosiveness was a huge part of why we were as successful as we were this year. And so that's something we hope to be able to continue, and then we'll see if we can find ways to be more efficient over the course of the offseason and what we can add and introduce that could help us, particularly in the red zone. I think during the end of the season, we could have found some more ways to score some more points for sure.
Are you happy with the scheme changes that Frank brought? I know obviously the number of sacks is not one that you guys are all happy about, but there's a lot more that goes into that behind the scenes. Are you happy with what you guys were able to change from a pass protection standpoint?
Very. I mean, I think Frank's an excellent technician. I think our guys got better over the course of the season with technique and how they're going to implement it and ways to get better and improve. I thought they did a really good job. Run game wise, the scheme we've improved in the run game. I thought. I mean, Joe Mixon had a career year. We were efficient when we needed to be efficient. We weren't going to run down anybody's throat by any stretch. That wasn't really who we were. But when we had to run, we ended up finishing games in the run game. And Joe Mixon's a huge part of that. Frank's a huge part of that schematically. And so I was pleased with what we did and how we did it over the course of the year. And certainly there's plenty of room for improvement. I'd like to be in the spots that we need to be better, particularly short yardage, things like that, where we weren't as good over the course of the year, where you wanted to be able to get a yard. Those are spots we can improve. But I thought Frank did a great job. Frank's a great coach, and those guys really responded to him well.
How long does it take to marry that? To marry what he brought to you get to your system. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't happen in the first year.
It does. I mean, it's not. The system is kind of we've had elements of the system in place. We've been a wide zone team. We just got better at it. We ran it better this year than we had the previous couple of years. Some of that's from familiarities. A lot of that is Frank and the way he teaches it. We do our best to marry those things up. It's a balance in the NFL. It's not perfect because you got quarterbacks that want to be in the gun, and you got runners that want to be under center. And you do your best to marry those things with what the quarterback's comfortable with and how you can be most efficient and effective. It's not a perfect science by any stretch, but yeah, certainly we got some splits that, guns and unders and all those things that we could marry better over the course of this next offseason.
But the concept of what you guys want to do is firmly in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw plenty of Samaje Perine
Yep.
on third down.
Yep.
Do you, and not just Super Bowl wise, I'm not in general, do you view Joe Mixon as a three-down back still? Do you still want him to be
Yeah, you do.
that?
I mean, he's done some of that for us over the course of the year. Samaje is an excellent protector, and Joe can't play every single snap of the game, and so you have to pick and choose when he's in and out of the game. He's obviously going to carry the load on first, second down. There's really nobody else who wants to carry the ball in those spots. Samaje does a good job spelling them when needed. But third down is where you can kind of create the breaks. You can give him a moment to take a breather and get ready for the next set of downs. And Samaje is excellent in protection. Took over the role really that Gio vacated when he left. But you have to have that kind of back. You have to have a guy that can go in and protect consistently when at third and 9 when they're going to pass. Samaje did a great job. That was a good role for him. And there's always going to be a division of labor in the backfield. Very rarely are guys on the field for all 3 downs all the time. But Samaje's role is that he's our protecting back. He's our third down, 2-minute passing situation type player that does a good job spelling Joe. And Samaje he's a big back too. I mean, he's not small, and he's capable of running the ball. He's got ability as a runner. So a lot of confidence in him. He does a good job with the roles that we asked him to do. But Joe's usage has kind of increased on third down. He's gotten better in pass pro. We challenged him last offseason to get that way, and he has gotten better. And he's done a good job for us, and he continued to do so as the season kind of moved along. And then Samaje really settled into that role and did a great job for us. So it just really that's how we felt comfortable with the rotation and the division of labor.
That being said, though, when you look at the usage rates on third down for Mixon, they were pretty consistent for what they were to 2020 when they were split here and there.
Sure.
Would you like to still see him be able to be on the field more on third downs, and while you do give him spells, do you kind of need him to kind of be that?
Yeah,
what
I
you
mean,
guys were asking of him?
I think the way that it's shaken out has been about what it would be. I mean, it maybe be a little bit more, but over the course of a season and talking about 18 games and into the playoffs, you have to be able to spell those guys. And that's where, if we're going to take him out on a down, I'd rather take him out on third down so he's good for first and second down, ultimately. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be exactly how you want it every single time. But you definitely have to have a division of labor in that room. And you really need a third back, too, which is where Chris Evans comes in for us. That does a good job in the pass game and those types of things, too. So there's got to be a division of labor. You're never going to have him take that many snaps, especially if you want to keep him fresh over the course of the season. But, at the end of the day, I'd like to see maybe a little bit more usage for him on third down. But his production for us is going to be in the run game, and it's going to be as a pass catcher. And let Samaje take the pass protection part of it. Generally is how it worked out over the season. So
CJ is another player that's up for free agency this year. Obviously, we see it from a personality standpoint, how much the team rallies around him. But from a production standpoint, can you tell us a little bit more about just how valuable he is in what you guys want to do, and is he someone that you guys would like to have back?
Yeah, we'd love to have CJ back. There's the business part of it is not up to me. I love what CJ brought to our offense. I love what he brought to our team. I think he's a phenomenal leader. I think our guys love playing with him. I think he rallies our team as good as anybody as far as the leadership role is concerned in the locker room. He's a great worker, and he's a really productive tight end. And I think at one point he had like 35 targets and 36 targets and 35 catches. So really reliable. When the ball goes his way, he made plays on it. And he's a reliable underneath factor because we got the receivers that can stretch the field. He's the one that when we can check the ball down, he can get us 8, 9, 10, 12 yards on a 3 or 4 yard throw. And there's a lot of comfort that comes in that for the quarterback in particular, that he knows that if I got to check the ball down, CJ's going to get us yards. And he did that consistently over the course of the season. I thought this was his best season for us in his time that I've been with him in 3 years. He's a guy that is a big part of our offense, and I certainly would like that.
You had 3 receivers that played almost every game. I'm sure you love that.
Yes.
But that's rare. That's going to happen every year. What is your vision and your view of the back of that room? Because do you guys need new people? You feel like you need some fresh blood in there, some young pieces to be there as insurance? Because there's a lot of uncertainty behind your big 3.
Yeah, I think you're always looking for how do you improve the depth of your team, and that's one of the rooms that we're very top heavy and we're excellent there. It's maybe our best room on the team, and they've performed that way. They're awesome. Auden Tate had the injury this year. He battled most of the year. He's been a really productive player for us. Mike Thomas, when he's had to go in. Plus, that role as the backup receiver is always going to be special teams heavy. So they got to be able to contribute. And Mike's done a great job on special teams. There's a return element that goes to that room most of the time. that we have is who's going to be the returner and how can they get active on game day and where's their role. So there's a lot of gymnastics that go with working the back of the receiver room. Guys that we feel confident in that have been productive for us, you know, and even Trent Taylor stepped in at the end of the year as your returner and he did a nice job and really was productive. So and you're always looking for competition. So if there's guys that we think that can push for that fourth role, that fifth role, the return role, whatever that is, you know, this is the time of year where you try to address that. But the guys that we've had have done a nice job and they've been called upon. Auden Tate in particular and Mike Thomason have been reliable 4 and 5s for when we needed them to play.
You probably haven't gone in much into the draft, particularly deep into the second waves, but I mean, you know what these receiver classes are like. Is that nice to know that that's kind of a nice fit for you guys, where a day 3 receiver would kind of be a nice fit for what you guys are probably looking for?
Sure, there's the receiver classes anymore are pretty deep. You know, it's just the way that college football's gone. It's where the football has gone in general with the passing game. There's going to be receivers available all throughout the course of the draft that fit whatever role you're looking for. There's slot guys, there's return guys, there's outside guys, there's big body. They're all there. So if you're looking for an improvement in competition, then you're going to be able to find it. It's out there. And so that's part of the whole process of trying to get better competition and more depth in the rooms all the way across the team. But certainly the guys that we've had step up for us have done well. And it's the time of year where you're trying to keep building competition and try to get better from top to bottom.
After 3 years, Brian, you and Zach obviously have a level of familiarity, and there's a continuity you mentioned earlier. How can you guys together get better following you?
Yeah, I think you always, at the end of the year, you evaluate your processes, how you go about your week, what areas were you deficient in, you know, that you didn't perform as well as you'd like. So, you know, one of the things, for example, we were really, really good coming out of the half, probably not as good to start the game. You know, what leads to that? Is that the scheme you're playing against? Is it whatever the factors might be? And you look at how do you improve that process? Can we be better on the coaching side of putting our guys in better position to start a game? How do we get better? How do we get more consistent in the red zone? We got hot early in the year, and then we kind of weren't as productive at times when we needed to be in the red zone. So you look at all those things and try to determine on our side as a coaching staff, what is our process? Can we improve that somehow? Is there any way that Zach and I can work differently on it? Do we need to bring in other guys from the staff in different spots? And you look at all those things to try to improve the process of getting to the game day. And really, you know, those guys on the staff do a great job too. And maybe it's like we need to get more from them. Maybe we can get more input, more direction, and get guys growing a little bit as well, which is the benefit of being together for so many years, is you can push the growth of your staff on top of it. So I think it's a good spot to be in. It's exciting that we got all coordinators coming back for a 4th season. I think that means a lot. I think it's a big deal, especially when you're coming off a season where, you know, we might end up in a really short, condensed off season. There's not a whole lot of things we get to do that's new.
And is it only natural for Joe Burrow to have a bigger voice in things?
Oh, absolutely. And he did over the course of the year, did a great job of his input. And he's only going to get more comfortable and more vocal about the things that he feels confident in and wants to see from the direction of the offense. And that's what we want. We want him to have that input and that ownership. It's his offense at the end of the day. And he's the one that's going to be out there on game day commanding it. So whatever it is that he feels comfortable with, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that's the right thing for us.
Speaking of starting games, how much do you guys script ahead of time, and how strict do you stick to that?
We script. We're pretty consistent with the early calls. You know, we have a general order. You know, Frank will give the run game, and then we try to marry it up with the pass game and the play action game and screens and dropbacks. You try to stay pretty well within it. Obviously, you get into situations, you jump off it. You get into the 3rd down or red zone, you kind of jump off it. But I would say we usually those early calls usually take you through the first quarter, more or less. And then a lot of the times you get to halftime and you have 2 or 3 left that you hadn't called, and you go, okay, well, we got to make sure we get to these. We liked them early and we didn't get to them for whatever reason. You try to come back to them as soon as you can in the second half. So it's kind of a fluid process. I would say we're not super strict on the order. It's a little bit of a game feel position, all those things. But we definitely have a set number of plays and favorites and how we rank them. And Joe's got input on that as well to start the game. So I would say it's a process that we'll look at, see if we can improve it, because we weren't as good coming out to start the games as we would have liked to have been. We'd like to play the lead more often than we did. We got behind a few times. That kind of put us in a hole, and we got to come climbing out of it. It's a lot easier to play with the lead than it is to play from behind. So that's probably one of the things we'll take a hard look at this offseason, see where we can improve.
That's what I said, because you guys are so good in that middle eight. Do you maybe go that route where you're not scripting it?
Yeah, and that could be a part of it too. You know, again, without having really dove into it and studied it the way that we need to, I don't know if I can give you a good answer on the differences, but sometimes it's just the way that the team plays, and sometimes nothing changes in the process, and all of a sudden it flips the next year where you're great to start, and then you're not as good coming out in the third quarter. It's not always an exact science, but we try our best to put the guys in position to have success earlier than later. That would usually help.
Yeah.
Just two things on the offensive. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just two things on the offensive line. You're talking about wide receivers.
Yeah.
About how there's reams of wide receivers.
Yeah.
The last 5 years or so, it seems like there's just been there are very few offensive linemen that can come in and make an impact, kind of like the wide is kind of flipped.
Yeah.
Is that because of the college game? And the three guys you drafted last year, did they kind of suffer from kind of a big jump to the college to the pros?
It's hard to give a definitive answer on the state of college football or anything like that. I just know that playing offensive line in the NFL is a really difficult job. And there's a lot more technique, there's a lot more knowledge that comes with playing in the NFL than there is in college. And then on top of that, the players you play against that's where all the freaks are. I mean, those interior defensive linemen, those edge rushers, I think the best players in football right now are playing on the, it feels like every week there's two pass rushers. You're like, how are we going to block these guys? But there's an adjustment, and the technique is so much more important. A lot of guys get by with size and strength in college, but you can't in the NFL. Everybody's good. So the technique portion is huge. And then you got to get those guys to play as a unit. You know, you got 5 guys that got to work together. So there's a whole other element of that, the camaraderie in the room, the execution together as opposed to just individually. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's hard, and I'm really pleased with the way that Jackson came along. He matured quite a bit over the course of the year. Trey Hill got some spots where he got to play some. He's done a nice job. And then Deontay Smith, really, I thought, as the season went along, got better and better. So I'm excited to see what those guys look like in year 2, after a year of understanding what NFL football looks like and a year of getting technique work and getting a chance to get a full offseason. So it's challenging to play offensive line in the NFL, and it feels like the guys on defense just keep getting more athletic and bigger and stronger every time you step out there. So it's not easy for them. It's a hard job.
How do you guys start? Can any of those guys start?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I like our young players. I like, Akeem Adeniji had his moments of really nice play. He took his lumps. There's definitely some really positive signs with Deontay. You watch that last Cleveland game where they had a chance to go against, some NFL starting caliber players, and Deontay played well. To sit here and say that we're just going to line up and bank on those 3 guys' improvement to be better, no, I mean, we're going to do our due diligence and evaluate in free agency and in the draft and find ways. If there's an avenue that makes us better, we're going to pursue it. But I do like the way those young guys came in and developed, and it does take time to be a good NFL offensive lineman, particularly if you're not a shoe-in top 5 or top 10 type pick. And even those guys struggle. So it's a tough position to play.
How hard is it?
Go ahead.
How hard is it to balance developing those young guys while also maybe signing a couple veteran free agents that could start for you?
Yeah, it is tough to balance that because you're not, we're not in the business of really building programs to a sense. I mean, we want to, but the immediacy of the NFL requires you to win, and you have to do all the things possible to put your team in position to win. And we feel really good about the nucleus of our team and the guys that we can bring in with a chance to improve us, however that looks. And we got a lot of our own guys that are up too that we're trying to bring back. CJ, all the guys on offense that you'd like to see back, but you got the defensive side you got to worry about too, and they got guys up. So it's a whole puzzle that you got to fit together. But there's certainly anytime we get a chance to improve the team, no matter the position, we're going to take a chance to improve it if it works that way. And then you still have to continue to develop because development is still part of the league. It's still part of your team. It's how you get depth. It's how you get players better. You still have to be able to do that with your young players as well. So it's a balance, and it's not a perfect balance necessarily all the time, but you do definitely have to be able to develop, and you got to be able to go sign free agents and plug them in and get them to be a part of your program. So I think the defensive side last year was a good example of that. Guys that brought in the program with our young talent and meshed really well. So I think that there's avenues to do it. We'll do it.
What are the challenges of evaluating the guard position from, it seems like not just here, but most teams across the NFL, it seems to take that position a little bit longer, maybe so than like a right tackle that can come in and start and play it right away. From
Yeah.
the guard standpoint, what makes it so challenging for some of those guys to come in and play what you need them to play right away?
I think a lot of those guys you see are tackles in college. You know, there's a large handful of guys that are the best linemen in college that they play tackle for them. They're the best athletes, all those things. So sometimes it's a position change. Jackson Carman would be a perfect example of that, where you're taking a guy that was a left tackle in college for most of his career, and you're making him a guard. That takes time. And I think that the interior position in the NFL, you see a different style of player. And those guys, those high-end interior players, like Jeffrey Simmons and Chris Jones and Aaron Donald, those guys are unbelievable players. And so it takes some time to learn how to play against those guys. And it takes reps, and there's just a time element to it that we're not always afforded, but it's a real thing. The guys have to be able to settle in and learn how to play. There's technique and hand placement that has to go on. And like I said, there's a lot of reasons to it, I think, but it's hard to find dominant interior offensive linemen that come in early right away and play like that for whatever reason. I'm sure there's a long list you could look at, but it is difficult to find those guys.
Have you had a chance to look at Kenyon Green yet at all?
I have not. We just had him in an interview last night. It'd be my first exposure to him. Guys.
What'd you think? Nice.
Did a nice job. I mean, it's so hard in 18 minutes to get a real feel, but you just try to get a feel for how they speak and all those things, and it was good.
Is one of the things trying to figure out if Carman is more comfortable on the left side?
Yeah, that's part of it. The hard part is when you're an interior player, you got to be able to do two things. Whether you're a snapper and a guard, or you're be able to flip both sides, you have to be able to do both, because the way the season works out and injuries work out, there's going to be a time where you may have to flip sides. So you have to cross-train. That's part of it. But guys certainly do have comfort on one side versus another. Whether it's a left-handed stance versus a right-handed stance, whether it's just the movement skills on that side of the ball, those things tend to be. Guys do have preferences most of the time, and you try to put them in a spot where they can play their best, whatever that preference may be, as long as it fits the whole design of the unit.
Did you get a chance to watch Desmond Ridder at all this year?
Very, very little. Very little. They were a fun team to follow, just kind of loosely. And I know that I've enjoyed talking to Coach Fickle when I've had chances to, when we've been around those guys at UC. I think they do a great job. They got great staff. They got good players. They recruit well. But I have not had a chance to watch Desmond Ridder closely. As far as an evaluation goes, I just know he did a hell of a job for them this year. I mean, really, experience and talent. It seems like he's got all the tools you could ask for. How I would evaluate him, I couldn't tell you. I haven't watched him enough to comment, but I really like him as a person from what I've seen locally and the news and TV and stuff like that. I think he's got the right makeup to be successful.
How do you balance the evaluation process of a quarterback when you've got one who's so young, and you know that that's not necessarily a position you'll have to address?
Yeah, you try to just be aware. You have to do due diligence. I won't spend as much time evaluating quarterbacks. But Dan Pitcher will evaluate all of them just like he would every year. He'll rank them, he'll grade them, and then that can come up 4 years from now. That can come up at some point when somewhere else, another job. You always want to have familiarity with the draft class and do your due diligence and make sure you've graded the players the way you see them, regardless of whether you need one or not. And that's kind of all positions in general. But you always want to make sure you have a good handle, particularly on the quarterbacks, because they may be coming up as a backup in free agency. They could come up a lot of different ways over the course of 5 to 8 years, so you want to make sure you know who those guys are coming out.
Do you guys need to upgrade from Brandon?
Brandon's a really good backup quarterback for us, and I know he's a free agent as well. One of those guys talk about that you're trying to bring back. But
So you guys do want that?
I love Brandon. He did a great job for us. How that fits in the business part of it is not really up to me, but I know that Brandon's an excellent backup quarterback for us. Played well when he's played. And he's got a great relationship with Joe. And that part's important.
Yeah.
The backup quarterback relationship with the starter, it's a really unique relationship that if you have a good one is a really positive thing for me. So really like Brandon, really like what he brought to our team and to our room as a quarterback spot. And again, those decisions on the business part of it aren't up to me, but I like Brandon. I'd love to have him back.
What is the next step for Joe? I mean, we sit here in the MVP conversation in year 2, but what is the next step for him?
That is a good question. I think now everyone knows what he's capable of. It's not a surprise to any of us. But the key is, I think, when you look at all these guys over the years, is then they do it every year. You know, I think that's the biggest difference between guys that flash and guys that are here for the long run. And I think Joe's here for the long run. He'll be in that conversation for his entire career, but he's still got to go out and do it. You know, I think this is a great offseason for him with a chance to be healthy going into it, really get some good work in, and really evaluate his performance and where he can be better. Because he's still a young player. It's not that he can't improve. There's plenty of things that he can be better at, and he knows that. And we'll get to those things when they come back in the building later in the spring. But you know, you're always evaluating, you're always learning, you're always trying to get better. And I think Joe's no different. I'm sure he'll mess around with throwing motion again like he does every year. A lot of quarterbacks do that. They're like golfers in that sense. How do they find that 1% difference that can make them better? But you know, the next step for Joe is to really take total command of the whole thing. And I think that he's well on his way to doing that. He did it this year. And ideally, it's, you know, he gets all excited when he had that little stretch where he called those plays, you know, when he has that one out. But that's what you want. You want your quarterback to be able to be an extension of the staff and be able to go out there and call the plays and feel great about what he's doing. And that's not that he's going to call every play or anything like that, but that's part of the process. And I think that he's excited about that, having that kind of ownership and that kind of ability. We'll just keep trying to build and grow from there. But I think that the consistency over time is what you're really looking for. And I think he's up to that challenge for sure.
I mean, is that the next step? Is that saying, all right, next year we want to have stretches where we're going to give you a plays or a drive or doing it during sessions in camp or whatever it is? That's what you guys are planning on doing, and be like, make him be more part of that part of it?
To say how that'll look here in a training camp, I can't say that yet. But I do think that there's an element of having him have more command and put him in those spots, make him uncomfortable in a sense. Like how do you get a guy that's really hard to make uncomfortable? How do you make him uncomfortable in practice to see where you can get more growth from him? And that's certainly one way you can do it. But yeah, you want to challenge him. He wants to be challenged. All great players want to be challenged. They want to have things that they can get excited about and look forward to. And that's one of the things that you try to do is every year find something that they can be excited about and really sink their teeth into and find a way to take ownership of something like that, whatever it may be. For Joe, part of that's going to be, hey, look, maybe you call this 2-minute drive, it's yours. And just get his brain activated and thinking about those things. So that's going to be for sure going to be part of the process for him this offseason.
How rare is that year 3 that you'd be talking about that with the guy? Is that
pretty rare? Yeah, pretty rare. There's not a lot of guys who can say it, have the ability to do it, you know, and we trust them. That's the best part about it is I trust everything that Joe sees and how he sees it during the course of the game and what he likes and what he wants to see from the passing game and the run game. So whenever he checks and does things like that, we're all for it. And I think that's a fun thing about the continuity, you know, for all of us being together for as long as we have now, being able to trust our guys. Everyone's on the same page all the time. And I think that's a lot of fun. And it is probably pretty rare for a third-year player to be talked about making that kind of progress. Usually that's something maybe 5-6 years in, but I think we all know that Joe's a whole lot different than a lot of people. So.
Well, we appreciate you taking